It's 2020. I think it's time to stop calling needlepoint tapestry. Hello lovelies, thank you so much for joining me in my studio again today. Today's video is hopefully not too much of a rant, but basically I just want to talk about the difference between tapestry and needlepoint. I'm not going to be throwing shade at needlepoint in this video, I promise, because my whole business is built on needlepoint. I started Threefold Designs in 2003 doing needlepoint kits, and I still sell those kits and patterns in my shop today. So I'm definitely qualified, I think, to talk about both mediums because I have spent many years doing both of them. Now, in tapestry circles, the most frustrating thing is when needlepoint artists say that they do tapestry. And I have seen this so many times. I've even seen them in magazines where they call themselves tapestry, and all these tapestry artists have said, this doesn't look like tapestry, this looks like cross stitch or tent stitch, or it does not look like tapestry, and it's really quite frustrating, and I am going to say insulting to call needlepoint tapestry. And in today's video I'm going to explain to you the reasons why, just so that you can get a little bit of an understanding of why these two terms are not interchangeable. So before we get into the differences between the two, I'm just going to give you a very quick definition of what each medium actually is. So tapestry is woven on a loom. And so when people say they do tapestry, I always ask them, oh, what kind of loom do you use? Because that's what real tapestry is made on. So what you're doing with tapestry is you're creating the whole fabric from scratch. The warp are the vertical threads, and that's what's on the loom, and the weft are the horizontal threads. And you use the weft to make the design, and the weft is packed down so tightly that you can't see any of the warp. So technically, if you can see the warp, it's not real tapestry. I may have broken the rules a little bit on some of my pieces, but hey, rules are meant to be broken. With needlepoint or cross stitch or any of those types of embroidery stitches, the stitches are done onto a pre-existing fabric, usually a heavy canvas, or some cross stitches done on a finer Aida cloth. So there's already a pre-existing fabric and you're just stitching on top of it. So the reason that needlepoint is so much easier to learn than tapestry is that with needlepoint, you already have a graph in place, so you can follow a design more easily. With tapestry, it takes many years to learn the techniques in order to create what's in your head onto the loom. It's a really complicated process. So the main reason that tapestry artists get so upset about needlepoint artists calling their work tapestry is because tapestry is incredibly difficult and time-consuming to learn. So I started learning in 2010. I didn't do my first large tapestry until the end of 2012, and it took me until about 2016 before I could feel confident that what was in my head I could produce on the loom. And even now, in 2020, I still consider myself to be intermediate, beginner intermediate, because sometimes I'm working on a piece and I still think, how on earth can I do this? It's such a complicated medium, and tapestry artists have told me all the time, oh, you need to be doing it for at least 20 years before you can become good at it. So it is a medium that is really complicated. Whereas needlepoint, I believe anyone can learn needlepoint, and they can learn it very quickly and easily. In fact, I do have a video, so I'll put the link up above for you to have a look at that. But basically, anyone can pick up a needle and thread and a piece of canvas, and they can follow a cross-stitch pattern and create something very quickly and easily. Obviously, designing for cross-stitch or designing your own needlepoint designs is more complicated, but again, that's a completely separate process altogether. I'm more talking about the medium of needlepoint versus tapestry. So why do people call needlepoint tapestry? Well, I did a lot of research on this and I couldn't find a definitive answer, but what I came up with was, you have to remember that back in the Middle Ages, tapestry was really expensive. Even now, the tapestry that King Henry VIII commissioned, they're more expensive than most things in the UK, apart from the crown jewels. So they are very, very precious pieces of work. And they were so finely woven that one person could only do about an inch of weaving per day. And that's because they used very, very fine EPI, which is the set they use, much finer than we use today. They used precious threads, and it was a trade to learn tapestry. It wasn't a domestic craft hobby at all. It was a really serious trade, and back then men usually did tapestry, as was the case. Women didn't have the opportunity to do that. So I think what happened was in the 1800s, needlepoint started to become popular, and they started to create faux tapestries because tapestries were just so expensive and out of the reach of most people to have in their homes. So people were creating needlepoints made to look a bit like tapestries. Even now, if you go to some of the houses, like in South Australia, Erbray House has a large tapestry, and it's not a tapestry, it is a needlepoint. It is a tent stitch, which is the half cross stitch, and that's what became popular in the 1800s. There is a type of needlepoint called Berlin work, and that is what was used by the ladies as their domestic hobby, and that became really, really popular. That's the time when needlepoint kits started to be designed, so you could buy a kit with your pattern already designed and all of your wool, and even these days you can still get needlepoint kits. I still sell needlepoint kits, they're fantastic. But that is when the term tapestry was used for needlepoint. So I think it was around that time that it started. And even today, people are still continuing that tradition of using the incorrect terminology. Now, tapestry did become popular again in the late 1800s when William Morris popularised it. And for him, it was because he considered tapestry weaving as one of those lost arts that he wanted to bring back as part of the arts and crafts movement. So he made his own tapestry loom following a 17th century pattern from France, and he's the one who then created the tapestry workshops at where was it, Merton Abbey or somewhere like that. So he created his own tapestry workshops and had his tradespeople make those tapestries that you can still see in galleries and museums today. Tapestry weaving did become popular again in the 1920s with the Bauhaus. The Bauhaus design school in Germany, you had amazing weavers like Annie Albers and Gunther Stolzer, and they did popularise weaving again. And then in the 1960s, there was another resurgence of tapestry weaving, and that's when after that some of the tapestry workshops started to be opened, like the Dovecot Studios in Scotland, and you've got the Australian Tapestry Workshop in Melbourne, and there are a few around the place, but not very many these days. But that's when tapestry weaving had a resurgence. So really that should have been when people stopped using the term tapestry for needlepoint, but it's still stuck. Even these days I see there are needlepoint kit designers, especially in the UK and Australia, who use the term tapestry. And I just feel like saying you can't do a tapestry kit. It's hard to explain to a non-tapestry weaver, but there's no way that you could do a tapestry kit because tapestry is really unpredictable. When you're weaving, you've got no way of determining how that is going to work out. It's just your absolute skill and your experience that's going to do that. Unless you're doing an abstract piece where it doesn't matter as much, when you're doing a more realistic piece, it is very unpredictable how it's going to turn out. So there's no way that you can actually do a pattern for a tapestry unless you're just doing a series of shapes. These days it's even more complicated because these days people are doing the woven wall hangings that I know a lot of people call weavings. And again, that's not tapestry either. That's closely related to hand weaving. And I may do another video on the difference between tapestry and hand weaving in the future. If you're interested, leave me a comment down below if you are. But I think in 2020, we should be using the correct terms for the correct mediums. And that doesn't mean that one is better than the other, but they are very different and it will avoid confusion. And also, why doesn't needlepoint just own it? Why don't they just say, we do needlepoint, we do cross stitch, we do embroidery? Just own it, use the correct terms. It's a valid medium in itself. It's a really great medium to use for craft, but also to use as an artistic medium. There are amazing needlepoint artists in the world today, and just own the term. And then you won't upset tapestry weavers as well. So I would love to know in the comments down below what your opinion is of this. I know I'm going to upset some people. That's life. But hopefully by really narrowing down and explaining which medium is which, we can just avoid confusion in the future and avoid a bit of the frustration that comes with this sort of thing. So if you like this video, I would really appreciate if you could hit that like button and if you could subscribe to my channel so that I can bring you more of these controversial videos. Actually, usually I'm not that controversial, but maybe this one might be. Until the next video, bye!